The night was not kind to David. He felt restless and his dreams were bizarre and seemed to go on and on. Some were quite vivid, but they gradually became more and more nebulous. Although, they all had an uncomfortable hazy quality to them. Like he should be remembering more, but it just wasn't there. There were things he recognized, and many more that he didn't. At times he was flying, and at others he would be in a cage, unable to move. There were flashes of sensations that he couldn't make sense of. Like the feeling of having to go to the bathroom while dreaming, but more than just that. He felt joy, fear, anger, sadness, and excitement, all so incredibly real and potent in the moment, but completely nonsensical afterwards. Like being chased in a nightmare and then waking to wonder why you had been scared at all. Except he wasn't waking up. What was happening? David had never felt this before. It was strange. It was scary. It was not natural. He felt like he was aware of time passing, but he had no idea how much. He could almost wake up at times, but he kept slipping back down. Like trying to climb an icy hill and making no progress. Shapes and sounds continued to swirl around him as he struggled in vain against an unseen and unknown enemy. Then it all stopped. Everything was black, quiet, and peaceful now. His mind no longer felt like it was at war with itself, and everything seemed still. David wasn't sure how long he laid there, but he felt exhausted, so he let himself rest. Besides, his alarm hadn't gone off yet, so he was fine. He wasn't going to be late for class just yet. He wasn't even sure he could have gotten up if his alarm had gone off. His bed was just so comfortable now. There was a light breeze playing across his face, slightly brushing something against his cheek. The noise from a small brook was soothing, the water sounding clear and refreshing. The light chirps of birds echoed around him. Wait, David hadn't left his window open, had he? No, it was winter, so it was cold as hell outside, so of course he hadn't. Why was he hearing water too? Was there a leak in the bathroom? Something wasn't right. He needed to wake up, but his eyes were so incredibly heavy. David was suddenly aware that he was lying on his back and not on his side like usual. He was starting to get uncomfortable, but his arms and legs were stiff. Against all the protesting of his various body parts, David managed to slowly open one eye. Where his ceiling should have been was the canopy of a forest. Sunlight streamed through the blue leaves. The branches were a shade of dirty rusty red, and the light had more of a bluish tint to it than it should have. Like a fluorescent light instead of an incandescent bulb. David slowly moved his head to the side. The trunks of the trees were the same rusty color, all rising from rich dark soil, covered in a thick layer of blue grass. No, blue was the wrong color. There was a definite green tint to it, making it look closer to teal. Wait, why the hell am I debating the color of the grass right now? David thought, alarmed. As the strangeness of his situation gradually dawned on his tired mind, David's instincts kicked in, and he suddenly felt more alert than he had in a very long time. He sat up as quickly as he could and looked around, frantically trying to take in as much of his new environment as possible. The trees around him were not very dense, allowing a fair bit of sunlight to penetrate the grove he was lying in. The underbrush was the same color as the leaves and grass, and grew in small groups around the forest floor. He finally spotted the stream he had been hearing. Thankfully, at least the water was the right color, as it flowed over red, orange, and brown gravel, and around the teal grass. David could definitely hear animals, but the more he listened, the less they sounded like birds, and the more it sounded like a cricket trying to imitate a songbird. He couldn't see any though, as they were most likely hiding among the branches of the trees. The air was pleasant, and what light made it through the roof of leaves was warm. What the actual fuss? David struggled to make sense of his situation. The plants didn't look like any species he had seen before, even with all his camping and hiking experience. He had no idea what bird made a sound like that, and he was absolutely certain that it had been the dead of winter when he went to sleep last night. Was he in a distant tropical country? Panic slowly started to creep into his thoughts. No, I do not need this right now. David clenched his eyes shut and harshly rubbed the side of his head with his palms, his knees rising to meet his elbows. His breathing was becoming ragged, and he could feel himself start to lose control. His mind was becoming a churning sea of anxiety, one that threatened to drown him if he wasn't careful. No, 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 no. Breathe. He forced himself to focus on that and that alone. Suck air in, hold for 3 seconds, slowly release, hold for 3 seconds, repeat. David focused on nothing other than the air entering his lungs for several minutes, creating a proverbial lighthouse in the dark waters of his thoughts. Okay, calm down. One thing at a time. Prioritize. As he thought, David noticed the clothes he was wearing. Or, more correctly, he became acutely aware of the clothing he wasn't wearing. He was still dressed in his sweatpants and loose-fitting shirt he had put on before going to bed. But, being that he had been going to sleep, he was lacking any kind of footwear. Well crap, that isn't ideal. For some reason, not having shoes always made David nervous. He liked being ready for anything, but without shoes, he didn't really feel all that prepared. Forcing himself to focus, he decided he would address the whole lack of shoes thing later. Instead, he tried to think of the best way to proceed. Drawing from his time in the Boy Scouts, David slowly started going through things in his head. Normally, you would stay put when lost and wait for people to come looking. However, this method required him having told someone where he was planning on going. And, believe it or not, David had completely forgotten to tell anyone he was planning on visiting a strange blue and red forest. David reasoned that in his current situation, it would probably be better to try and find some landmarks to narrow down wherever the hell he was. Then he'd worry about whether or not he'd be needing to find shelter for the night. At least I have water, he thought, glancing back at the stream. Feeling much better now that he had a plan, David pushed with his hands on the ground and jumped to his feet. Except, he actually jumped. As in, his feet briefly left the ground, even if only by an inch or two, as he rose from his sitting position. Surprised, David stumbled as his newfound momentum carried him further forward than he was expecting. He threw his arms out to catch himself and managed to remain on his feet, arms still outstretched. Whoa, what? David held his awkward pose for a few moments as he processed this. He hadn't pushed all that hard, certainly not enough to get air. Now that he thought about it, he did feel skinnier. No, not skinnier. Lighter. He felt lighter, which was an incredibly strange realization to come to. He had always been thin, but this was different. David straightened up, thinking hard. This warranted additional testing. Bracing himself, he bent his knees and got ready to jump for real this time. As he launched off, he had the sudden thought that he probably should have checked what was above him. Author's name and link to original text is in the description.